Hi there folks, let's talk about the Dutch elm disease. So I harvested this dry elm today. It died last year and I observed during the summer that no growth was happening, so I knew that the tree was already dead, and I left it standing for 9 months before I harvest. You can see that the cambium is completely rotted away and some bark beetles also moved in. This small pile of branches and stem here is coming from one tree, which I counted about 25 rings, so maybe about 25 years old. I didn't bring the thinnest of branches, but you can see that it's not a bad amount for a 25-year-old tree, considering it's been suffering from the Dutch elm disease since the day one, and it began its life as a root sucker down in the microforest, where I'll take you in a second. So there is a silver lining about the Dutch elm disease in our context, and I want to talk about that for a minute. Very convenient shallow placement. So last week I harvested another small elm tree which was about 10 years old, and you can see that it's with smaller diameter and also rotted. And this here is the previous stump from the previous generation of the same root ball, which is here. And this is a younger sibling, so that was harvested maybe 6 years ago or something. This was harvested today, and this is maybe 6 years old, so maybe 4 years younger than this one, and it's still growing. You can see that there are some broken branches from the snowfall, but it's healthy and no peeling bark, and massive new growth up top, easily 6 meters tall. I'm removing the lower branches as I go, so I'll be cutting those as well, those two broken branches, which promotes the tree to grow upwards and to grow straighter, and it's much easier to harvest. You can see here from the previous one, which I harvested from this one, I have very little branches, and those are with some good sizes as well for the fireplace or the outdoor cooking, the indoor or the outdoor fireplaces, and I'll be chopping those as well and using them. But you can see that we are in a small stand of elm trees here, maybe about 20 trees of similar age, and those were all cultivated, so to speak, by me. When we bought the property, there was no growth here because the previous owners cut everything down to the ground, and you can see the stumps here and there sticking out, still not completely decomposed. And when the elms start doing root suckers, such as those younglings here, I cultivate them by removing all the side branches and letting them grow upwards. And you can see that despite some snow broken branches, they have good height, and I'm just basically waiting them to die. And this is the silver lining in our case, in our context, because the elm trees being kind of self-terminating. Wow, the first butterfly of the season. Very abnormally warm today, 18 degrees in the shade. So the elm trees being self-terminating is a very convenient circumstance, because when they die, they continue to stand upright. They do not rot from the core, so they're not like a falling hazard, and the wind and the storms in winter cannot topple them easily. So I can have a full year to see that they are dying, to see that they produce no new growth, to know that they are already dead, and to harvest them and to use them in more manageable sizes. Sometimes the elms live to older age, so some of the plants are more resilient to the disease, You can see that this is the stump where I harvested today, and this is a smaller or younger sibling from the same root, which I harvested, I think, a few months ago. And those two I cut higher so I can use the stems to continue this dead hedge sort of structure here with all the smaller diameter dead branches, which I also want to continue as a kind of water slowing and sediment gathering collecting structure. So those two didn't really manage to get to an old age. This is 4-year-old and this is 3, but when I started cutting, I saw that it has new growth, not from the root, not as a root sucker, but from the stem. So I let those side stems grow, and I'll remove the side branches and let them regrow from here. That's sometimes happening, and it's good that this plant here, this specimen, is a bit more resilient if it can push new growth from the side instead from the root, where all of the top was dead and the bark is peeling because the cambium further upwards is dead. You can see here another example of the clumping behavior. We have several siblings here from the same root, so most probably the original plant was here a few decades ago, maybe 20 or 25 years. You can see that this is the oldest, this is a few years younger, and this is younger still, and this one is even younger. And we have lots of new root suckers, such as this youngling here, trying to push through. You can see down there a bunch of them, and if I have time I come and prune to allow them to grow faster upwards. But even here, even with the pruning, it's a rather closed canopy, so they struggle to reach for the light. So what needs to be done is a bit more thinning. We have some wild plum coming in here, and those trees are still healthy, and you can see that they're leaning mainly because they are striving to get into the light. At one point they'll all be dead, so we have to gradually start thinning them out. And the new generation, such as this youngling here, 2-year-old I think, or maybe 3, we'll have to replace them. The ones that grow in the shade grow, of course, way slower. This is of a similar age, and now that we have made a bit of a clearing here, it will start growing faster in the coming years. I will end with a quick shot of my favorite elm and hawthorn combo. You can see here that there must have been an older tree here which fell to the ground and almost completely rotted. I reeled off old blocks rotting like this in the forest floor. Excellent biomass and habitat and fungal food. At some time this one grew, and it was a closed canopy here, so it grew sideways, and then it branched out and started growing vertical shoots because we opened up the canopy here, and it now can afford to waken those sleeping buds. This is 1-year-old growth, easily 1.5 meters upwards. And here the younger sibling is leaning on this old hawthorn, which is also really crooked and branching out. But as we started to clean up, it was really congested here with lots of rosehip climbing and other wild plum trees occluding the canopy. You can see the vigorous growth which resprouted from the hawthorn here after the canopy opened a bit. And of course I started grafting it with medwars and black hawthorn varieties, and there as well, and more. So of course it won't be possible to heat our home entirely on the dead elms, but every time I harvest some, I'm grateful for the opportunity and this seemingly small but otherwise abundant self-growing, self-regenerating resource, which we get mainly thanks to the Elm disease. So there is a silver lining even in the worst of conditions.